So
now can we talk about the Star of Bethlehem?
oh, we have to.
So we've got these guys, and I almost said it. I almost said we got these three guys.
You
right?
almost said it.
I literally almost said that and caught myself and stopped me.
Nehemia, stop
So-
for a second.
so-
I read
yeah.
that and I said, "We three kings of Orient are," and then I thought, wait, where does it say three kings?
Right.
You don't know that song, but then
let's start with that. That in the New Testament, it never says there's three of them.
Yeah.
It never says they're kings.
Right.
In the Greek, it says they're magoi, which is magi.
Mm-hmm.
Magi is what's interesting. What it is, magi are Zoroastrian priests.
Mm-hmm.
That's the literal meaning of it. You might think it's the word magicians, which it is on some level. Let's talk about something that's said here in the Jewish annotated New Testament. And I want to bring this as an example of how to study.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm reading here in the Jewish annotated New Testament. That's another one of our sources on page 5. And he says, the wise men, Greek magi. Early Jewish readers may have regarded these Persian astrologers not as wise, but as foolish or evil.
Yes.
Philo calls Balaam a magos.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives the reference in Philo. See also Daniel 2:2 in the Septuagint.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So I was going to cite this and say, from the Christian perspective, from the Gentile perspective, magi are very impressive. But from the Jewish perspective, magi are these evil Zoroastrian priests that persecuted the Jews.
Right.
They were base astrologers and idolaters, and no Jew would be impressed by that. That's what I was going to present. And I decided to do something a little bit radical. I was talking yesterday to T-Bone. We did a quick brainstorming session. And doing that a lot kind of forced me, okay, I'm going to look up this. Like T-Bone say, well, how do you know that? Well, it says it right here. Okay, well, wait a minute. I got to look this up myself. So I look up in Philo, and here's what Philo says about magi.
Mm.
And now he's not talking about Yeshua. He's not talking about the New Testament. He's talking about how there's this group of priests who are Zoroastrian priests. For those who don't know, Zoroaster was a Persian, they call him a prophet, a Persian prophet or a religious leader. Sometime, we don't know exactly, around 600 BC, who started a new religion called Zoroastrianism. It's the religion that says there are two gods, a good god and an evil god. Cyrus of Persia, Cyrus the Great, was a Zoroastrian, which is why in Isaiah 45, God says, I make good and I make evil, right? Even though you didn't know me, Cyrus, you worship your gods and know about your God. Well, they only worship the good God. They hate the evil God. Guess what? I, Yehovah, do all these things. So Zoroastrian is alluded to in the Tanakh there, if you know the cultural context. The priests of the Zoroastrians were called Magi. It was actually a tribe, just like Kohanim in Hebrew. Well, Kohanim means priests. But when you say Kohanim, you generally mean Kohanim from the line of Aaron, right? There was a specific tribe, descendants of Aaron. So with the Zoroastrians, it's believed it was a specific tribe, the Magi, or the Magoi. So these Magi in Philo, here's what Philo says about them. Contrary to what the Jewish annotated New Testament tells us, and I'm glad I looked it up, it's true. In Philo, the Life of Moses 1:192, Pharaoh's magicians are called Magi. Balaam is called a Magi, a Magus. It's a singular, Magos. In Life of Moses 1:276. However, in the book Free, section 74, Philo writes, among the Persians there is the body of the Magi, who investigating the works of nature for the purposes of becoming acquainted with the truth, do as their leisure become initiated themselves and initiate others in the divine virtues by clear explanations. Mm-hmm. Plain English, they're scientists and scholars, according to Philo. Mm-hmm. I was really surprised to hear this, because my impression of Magi is those pagan Zoroastrian priests who worship fire and feed their dead to vultures, which is what they do.
I'm so glad you did something that you've always talked about for as long as I've known you, which is, one, find out the sources, see what it says, and do everything you can to bring different perspectives to try to come to a place of understanding. I have to tell you, Nehemia, when I read it, without going any further, I immediately thought about, okay, because there's something that happens. In English, it says this. It says the Magi, or whatever you want to say in English. But in Hebrew, Matthew, it says these were the Hozim of stars. So so it doesn't have
stargazers, astrologers, or astronomers, depending on your perspective.
I want to tell you something. So when I read it, immediately my perspective started to expand, and I started asking this simple question. So they're coming from the east. I'm not going to verse 2 yet. I'm not going to verse 3. I'm just talking about verse 1. They're coming from the east. They're going to Jerusalem. Something happened in the heavens. They saw it. And in fact, can we go into the next verse? Because
I want to finish with the Magi.
Yeah, because here's the point I wanted to make was when I saw it, I didn't think of them as what you said there, like what it said in the annotated Jewish Bible, but I was expanding possibly who they were and why it was that this caught their attention. Continue.
And just to give you an idea, like in the Talmud, it mentions Magi. It's called Amagosh, and it describes them as these kind of fools who believe stupid things. Like there's a story where one Magus, he says to a rabbi named Amemar, he says that, well, Ahura Mazda, the good God, he controls from your waist up. And I remind you, the evil God, he controls from your waist down. And this is one of the ideas of the Zoroastrians, that everything physical, carnal, is evil, right? Your genital areas, those belong to the evil God, and that's why you have lust. But your heart and your mind, those belong to the good God. So the rabbi responds to him. He says, why does the good God let, I don't know if I should use a euphemism here.
Don't use the euphemism.
He says, why does the good God let piss pass through his territory? In other words, the Zoroastrian priests, they see feces and urine as unclean things, and therefore they come from the bottom of your body because they belong to the evil God, and you should sanctify yourself. This is what, by the way, where we get the idea of blessing the food in Christianity. In Judaism, we don't bless the food, we bless God for the food. Christianity has this Zoroastrian echo, in a sense, which came through the who are those people called? They were called the Gnostics, who had adopted some of these ideas. And so this idea that the food is evil and you wouldn't put it in the sacred temple without first blessing it, right? So the rabbi says, wait a minute, if the top half of your body is sacred and the bottom half is profane, why does the liquid pass through and eventually become urine? It's going through the holy part, right? And he's kind of using logic to show how ridiculous the Magi are, right? Right? It's one body, right? And one God controls everything, right? And the same God who created your heart and your mind and your soul also created your feces and your urine. It's the same creator of the universe. That's what Isaiah 45 is talking about. And so he's explaining this to the Magus. And the point is, the rabbis did look upon these Magi, at least at a certain point in history, as sort of like foolish, silly priests. But there was another view in the first century. You see, Philo actually has a lot of respect for them. Now, what's the context there in Philo? This is important. The context in Philo is that people think the Magi perform magic, but what they're actually doing is they're studying nature so they can manipulate nature, right? If you want to turn, I don't know, one substance into another, right? That later became alchemy. What's the difference between alchemy and chemistry? The difference between alchemy is where you turn two substances into a third, or one substance into another substance. The difference between that and chemistry is, in chemistry, we say there's a natural explanation, and in alchemy, they say there's a supernatural mystical explanation. And so he's saying the Zoroastrian Magi might be misunderstood, that people think that they're performing magic, but actually they're studying nature in order to understand it better, just like scientists would today. They didn't have the word scientist, right? It's a modern term.